This is the most cursed hotel in the world, and if you stay here, you will die. A man in his late 20s was working for an unknown corporation. Let's call him Frank. Frank traveled around the country by car almost every week, and this week was no different. However, after a long week of meetings, he had one last stop before heading back home. Unfortunately, this last meeting went late, and by the time Frank was done, it was already dark out. Not wanting to drive at night, he pulled into the nearest gas station and decided to spend the night in his car. As he walked around the corner of the building, he saw a neon sign advertising a discount on all rooms. It read 50% off, but it wasn't just any hotel. It was an old historic hotel called the Emerald Palace. Built in the early 1900s, it looked like something straight out of a Stephen King novel. But since no one else was around and he didn't want to sleep in his car, he decided it would be best to take up the offer. When he pulled into the parking lot, there were only two other cars. One was a beat-up pickup truck, and the other was a brand new Lamborghini. Frank's car wasn't worth much, so he decided to park next to the Lamborghini in the hopes of deterring anyone who might want to break into his car while he slept. When he approached the counter, he noticed that both keys on the key fob did not work. Once inside, he realized that there was no one behind the counter and no one in sight. With no other choice, he decided to make himself at home. After checking his room, which was on the 13th floor, he began to feel uneasy. You see, the 13th floor didn't exist. There should have only been 12 floors in the building. As he stepped out of the elevator, the doors opened to an empty hallway. He could see the end of the hall, but there weren't any lights or emergency exits. The only thing that was there were doors. Dozens of them lined the walls. He started down the hallway, trying to find his room, but each door looked identical to the last. After about 10 minutes, he finally found his room. It was at the very end of the hall, and as he opened the door, he noticed something strange. Inside, it wasn't a normal hotel room. There was no bed or television. There was just a single chair in the middle of the room, and the window had been boarded up from the outside. Confused, he thought that maybe they just overbooked and gave him the wrong room key. So he went back to the elevator to try again. However, when he pressed the button for the 13th floor, it didn't light up. It was as if the floor didn't exist. Panicked, he tried the other buttons, but only the first floor worked. When he stepped out of the elevator, he found himself in the same hallway, except now the doors were all different. Some were slightly ajar, while others were wide open. But even though the doors were different, the room numbers were still the same. He went back into the elevator and tried again, but no matter what he did, he kept ending up in the same place. At this point, he was exhausted and just wanted to go to sleep. So he decided to go back to his room, or what he assumed was his room. When he pushed the door open, he saw that the boarded-up window had been removed, and through it, he could see the moon hanging in the night sky. He couldn't believe how stupid he must have looked running around like a chicken with its head cut off. He had obviously lost his mind. It was too late to check out, so he decided to make the best of it and went to sleep in the chair. In the morning, the sun streamed in through the window, and for a moment, everything seemed normal. He got up, stretched, and made his way to the bathroom. When he turned on the tap, the water was brown. As he looked around the bathroom, he noticed a note on the mirror. It simply said, "Don't drink the water." He laughed at how ridiculous the whole situation was. He decided to get some fresh air and walked outside. He couldn't believe his eyes. The beautiful Lamborghini from the night before was gone, and so was the beat-up pickup truck. The only car left in the parking lot was his. Just then, he felt his phone vibrate. It was his boss, wondering where he was. He told him he was on his way and hung up. He walked around the side of the building, intending to find another entrance, but there wasn't one. The entire side of the building was nothing but windows. As he walked back to his car, he noticed a blood stain on the ground. He bent down to investigate, but when he touched it, it stuck to his finger. Startled, he pulled his hand away and noticed that the blood wouldn't come off. His finger was now completely covered in it. He rushed to his car and stared at his hands in horror. They were covered in blood. He tried to wipe it off, but it wouldn't come off. He looked up and saw a man standing on the roof of the building across the street. He was beckoning to him, motioning for him to look up. When he did, he saw a blood-covered meat cleaver fall from the sky. It landed on the hood of his car, and as he watched in disbelief, the man on the roof vanished. With shaking hands, he opened the trunk and got inside. He locked the trunk and started to hyperventilate. He needed to get out of there. He tried to open the trunk, but it wouldn't budge. No matter how hard he tried, it was as if someone had glued the trunk shut. In a panic, he started banging on the metal, but it was no use. The trunk was stuck. Just then, he heard footsteps approaching. Someone was coming. He tried to make himself small, hoping that whoever was out there would pass by. But as the footsteps got closer, he realized that there wasn't anywhere for him to hide. The footsteps stopped right outside the trunk, and a voice asked, "Are you enjoying your stay so far?" Terrified, he responded, "Who's there? Please let me out." The person outside the trunk began to laugh. It was a maniacal sound that echoed through the parking lot. "You can't leave," he said. "Not until you pay your bill." In a panic, Frank reached for his wallet. "How much do I owe?" he asked, his voice trembling. "Oh, you don't need to pay now," the voice replied. "You can pay me later." As the man opened the trunk, Frank screamed, but no sound came out. His throat was dry and his body was shaking. The man smiled, revealing teeth that were stained a deep red color. "Check out the fine print on the back of the key card," he said. "It'll tell you exactly what you owe." Frank looked down and saw the key card lying on the seat beside him. On the back was a line that read, "Failure to pay will result in your eternal damnation." Below that was a price that read 13. Suddenly it all made sense. This wasn't just a hotel. It was a portal to hell, and he was trapped inside it. As the man reached for him, Frank closed his eyes and waited for the pain to begin. However, it never came. Instead, he felt himself being lifted off the ground and placed inside a wooden box. The man slammed the lid shut and nailed it in place. Then he carried the box to his Lamborghini and put it in the trunk. He drove the car onto the highway and sped away from the hotel. Behind him, the Emerald Palace stood tall, a beacon of hope for weary travelers looking for a place to stay. But those who did would soon find out that it wasn't just a hotel. It was a gateway to hell, and once you entered, there was no escape.